You've been thinking about it for 3 hours. You haven't moved. You haven't decided anything. You've just been sitting there, turning it over and over in your head, examining it from every angle, finding new problems with every potential solution, and somehow ending up more confused than when you started. Sound familiar? Because there's a particular kind of person who does this. Smart, self-aware, genuinely trying to figure things out, and completely paralyzed by the weight of their own thinking. The kind of person who analyzes their feelings before they feel them, who maps out every possible outcome before committing to anything, who reads about living more than they actually live, who has 17 tabs open about how to be a better person and hasn't left the house in 4 days. Nietzsche saw this coming. Not just saw it. He spent a significant portion of his philosophy warning specifically about it, because he believed that thinking, unchecked, doesn't just fail to help you, it actively consumes you. That the intellect turned inward with no outlet becomes something closer to self-destruction than self-discovery. This is his warning, and if you're the kind of person who thinks too much, you need to hear it. The problem Nietzsche. Actually diagnosed to understand the warning, you first need to understand what Nietzsche was watching happen around him in 19th century Europe, and why it maps almost perfectly onto what's happening to people right now. Nietzsche lived in an age he described as the death of God. Not a religious statement, a cultural one. The old structures that had given people meaning, purpose, certainty, religion, tradition, shared moral frameworks, were collapsing under the weight of science, reason, modernity. And what replaced them was an enormous amount of thinking, questioning, deconstructing, analyzing. People were more intellectually liberated than ever before, and a significant number of them were absolutely miserable. Nietzsche called this nihilism, not just the philosophical position that nothing has meaning, but the psychological condition of a person who has thought their way out of every belief system and arrived at nothing. Who has deconstructed everything and built nothing in its place? Who is so sophisticated in their skepticism that they can find a problem with every value, every commitment, every reason to act? And so they don't act, they just think. And the thinking becomes its own trap. He described a specific type he called the theoretical man. The person so devoted to understanding the world that they lose the ability to engage with it. Who watches life from behind the glass of analysis. Who turns everything into an object of study rather than an experience to be lived. Who mistakes knowing about something for actually doing it. Sound like anyone you know? Sound like you, maybe, on your worst days? Nietzsche wasn't being cruel about it. He was one of the most relentless thinkers who ever lived. He understood the pull of the intellect because he felt it himself, but he also saw clearly what happened when it became everything, when the thinking was never in service of living, but a replacement for it. The paralysis of infinite perspective. Here's the specific mechanism of how overthinking destroys you in Nietzsche's framework. Nietzsche believed that to live well, to actually commit to something, build something, become something, you need what he called a horizon, a bounded perspective, a set of values and commitments that you hold as real, that you act from, that you don't constantly subject to infinite re-examination. Every meaningful thing ever built by a human being was built by someone who believed enough in something to stop questioning it long enough to do it. The problem with people who think too much is that they keep expanding the horizon. They examine their values and find contradictions, so they revise them. They examine the revisions and find new contradictions. They consider every perspective until they've considered so many that they can no longer tell which ones are theirs. They become, as Nietzsche put it, epigones, people who inherit every idea but originate nothing, who consume endlessly and create nothing, who know the theory of every kind of life and are living none of them. He wrote in The Birth of Tragedy about what he called Socratic optimism, the belief that thinking and knowing are inherently curative, that if you just understand something deeply enough, the how to live part will sort itself out. And he believed this was one of the most dangerous illusions in Western culture. Because understanding something and living it are completely different acts. You can understand courage perfectly and still be a coward. You can understand love thoroughly and still be incapable of it. Knowledge about the thing is not the thing. And here's the line that should genuinely disturb you. Nietzsche said that the truly paralyzed thinker doesn't just fail to act. They use their thinking as a shield against action. The analysis isn't actually searching for an answer. It's postponing the terrifying moment of commitment, of choice, of becoming someone specific rather than remaining someone potential. Thinking in this mode isn't a tool for living, it's a way of hiding. What Nietzsche actually wanted from you. So what's the prescription? Because Nietzsche wasn't a nihilist despite what your philosophy professor might have implied. He wasn't saying thinking is bad. He was saying thinking without will is dead weight. The concept he kept returning to, the one that his entire philosophy orbits, is what he called the will to power. And immediately everyone gets the wrong idea. He's not talking about dominating other people. He's talking about something much more personal and much more demanding. The will to power is the drive to become, to impose your values onto your own existence, to stop being shaped entirely by circumstances and other people's frameworks, and start being the active author of who you are. Nietzsche wanted you to create, not consume, not analyze endlessly. Create a self, a set of values, a way of living that is genuinely yours. He called the person who did this the Übermensch, not a superhuman in the comic book sense, but someone who has the courage to live by their own values in the full knowledge that there's no cosmic authority validating them. Someone who looks at the silence of the universe, doesn't flinch, and builds meaning anyway. And crucially, this cannot be done in your head. It can only be done in the world. Through action, through commitment, through the irreversible choices that actually make you someone. You don't think your way to a life. You live your way to one. Nietzsche's warning to people who think too much is essentially this. Your intelligence is not your identity. Your analysis is not your contribution. Your understanding of every possible way to live is worthless if you never actually choose one and inhabit it fully, with everything you have, without the escape hatch of constant reevaluation. He said, become who you are, not who you've theorized about being, not who you're researching how to be. Who you actually are, right now, enacted in the world, imperfect and committed and alive. So here's the part where I ask you the question you've probably already been avoiding for the last 5 minutes. What are you overthinking right now? What decision have you been turning over for so long that the thinking itself has become a kind of procrastination dressed up as diligence? What version of your life exists in perfect clarity inside your head, and in almost no form whatsoever in reality? Because Nietzsche's warning isn't that smart people are doomed. It's that intelligence without commitment is just sophisticated avoidance. That the examined life taken too far stops being a life and becomes an examination. That at some point, and that point is probably sooner than you want it to be, you have to put down the analysis and actually do the thing. You already know enough. You've always known enough. The thinking was never the problem. The stopping was. So, what have you been overthinking instead of doing? Drop it in the comments, and if Nietzsche just called you out in a way you weren't prepared for, like and subscribe. Because every week on this channel, we find the idea that explains the thing you couldn't explain about yourself.